and to date we've actually been generalizing about the scenario, the global scenario within the UK of the economy going wrong and how it's going to impact those of us who are coming up to retirement or those of us already in retirement. So our main venom, if for want of a better description, today has been directed at the banking system, banks, closing down the banks, and the oil companies, the energy suppliers. What we're doing today is we're now going to start drilling down a little bit more detail into some of the key issues that are going to be impacting those of us, as I say, who are retiring or in retirement already. And the last podcast, we touched upon the number of bank branches that were closing down and went through all the horrific numbers that were pretty scary. What is actually happening here now, we've got a situation that's developed where a lot of elderly people coming up to retirement, are now going to be placed in an extremely vulnerable position, as happened to me. This being caused by the fact that with all these bank branches closing down, don't forget, since 2015, over half of all bank branches in the UK have closed down, which is a horrific number. This means these banks have retreated within themselves, and for those of us who want to actually still meet advisors face to face about banking, about investments, with them having retreated into themselves, they have deliberately put up this barrier and put us into a vulnerable situation. We're now into the realms of where, as happened with me, we're going to be looking at investing money, significant sums of money, with people we've never met, we don't actually meet them, and we don't actually go to any physical, hard-standing buildings. So this puts us in a dangerous situation, and I was nearly caught out by this myself. I'll give you the example. And I advise none of you to do this. On the internet, I was looking for bond investments, primarily 12-month bonds. And what I was doing was filling in forms. You get these pop-up little web ads that offer you these amazing bond interest rates, and you click on there, and then you just give some basic information about yourself and a phone number. I did this, and then I was mercilessly pursued by numerous phone calls from organisations wanting to sell me bonds. You'd think that with it being on the internet, they'd all be authorised and certified, but they're not. And I'm not an expert on financial investments, but I've got a little bit of savvy, and I know when something's going wrong. So with one such inquiry where somebody rang me up trying to sell me some bonds, in this particular instance, and it happened several times, in this particular instance, this was what I would describe as an East End barrow boy type who spoke so fast it was like a machine gun going off. And he was telling me how I was very fortunate because now they were in the financial sector, they were allowing people like myself to actually get involved in buying these bonds that previously had only been accessible to the super wealthy. So they were doing me a favour taking my money. That was the story being presented to me. And of course, it was hard sales technique, pressure. You have to sign up now. If you don't, you'll miss the opportunity. If you think about it overnight, the opportunity will not be there tomorrow. You've got to understand, this is what I was being told, you're now moving with the big boys, the big sharks here, and you've got to move quickly. You've got to be decisive or you don't come into this at all. So you had all these pressures being applied to you. In this instance, this guy, the East End barrow boy, he was trying to sell me a bond, and it was allegedly with the Bank of Ireland. And it was a pretty sophisticated scam because he actually gave me the bond number. So I thought this seems quite good, and it was a good interest rate. It was something like 5 or 6% interest rate, which was very good at the time. When I checked it out, after he put pressure on me to sign up there and then, it became apparent to me that evening that the bond with the Bank of Ireland had actually expired 12 months before. And I tracked down over the internet a letter from the CEO of the Bank of Ireland who'd written to all the investors in that particular bond, and he was informing them that bond had closed down and there were no further interest rates being paid on it. I could have been caught out. There were a few more steps I would have gone through before that, but I can see how people who aren't savvy, a little bit sharp in what they're doing, could be caught out and completely cleaned out. And this is what is happening right now. And going back to the point that I made there, people have been put into this vulnerable situation by the banks because there are no people to meet and there are no physical bank branches. Well, there are, but they're reducing rapidly. So this is an extremely dangerous situation to get involved in. So I recommend on the internet, don't ever fill in the forms that I did regarding bonds offering fantastic interest rates, because you will receive numerous phone calls from fraudsters and cowboys. And I'm surprised that this is allowed to continue on the internet. It should have been closed down by now. So just be very careful about that. Now, what I'm going to relate to you is, as I focus on the actual in more detail now on the investment side, all I can do, I can't instruct you what you need to do to invest your money. All I can do is relay to you the story that unfolded for me when I got involved in bonds and 1-year savings accounts. So this is not me advising you. I'm not taking any money off you. I don't want any money off you. This is just purely a story, my narrative of what actually happened to me. And anything I mention, if you do think this is interesting, then you check it out and you double check it yourselves. But I can, as I say, I can just outline the story and let you take it from there. So to summarize, what had actually happened from 2008 until 2022, my interest rate with Barclays was a derisory 0.25%, 0.4%, which deprived me of thousands and thousands of pounds in interest payments, a situation I wasn't very happy about. The situation started to change in early autumn 2022 with bonds, savings accounts, 1-year bonds, 1-year savings accounts being offered by the smaller banks. So these weren't the high street banks, the likes of HSS or HSBC rather, Barclays, not them at all. These were the smaller banks who I checked out, not double checking them, I'd check them out at least 4 or 5 times to make sure I wasn't getting myself into trouble. My main source of information, and I'd recommend this, is the Daily Mail financial advice page, which shows on a daily basis a list of all the smaller banks confirming the interest rates they're offering, and that's in terms of the bonds and the savings accounts. My advice, what I did, these banks that I went to and eventually invested in, I only ever used the Daily Mail financial website page, clicked on the links for those banks from the Daily Mail page to take me to those banks, so I knew they were official, authorized banks. They weren't fraudulent operations. Because if you try doing this searching yourself over the internet, there's a lot of sophisticated scams up there where these fraudsters position themselves very close to banks that have been approved by the FSCS and the FCA, and you've got to be really careful because, as I say, you can be caught out very easily. Anyway, that was my source of information which confirmed it was all legitimate, and that's the only way I accessed those banks. To summarise what was happening, I wanted to generate a monthly income with zero risk, and I achieved it. What I did, I split my money out from Barclays occasion to deposit it into the smaller banks, who, as I say, I checked out on the FSCS sites and the FCA sites to make sure they had the official recognition. I think it's called the FRN number. That's the critical information you need. You need to make sure the banks actually have an FRN number, critical. And when I did that, I'd start transferring my money across as into it would be a 1-year fixed rate savings account stroke bond for 12 months. And that paid me a monthly rate of interest. That being so, I've now maneuvered from the Barclays disaster scenario of 0.25, 0.4%, which is what they were giving me at the time, to an average now of 4.5%. If I'd acted quickly enough, I could have gone up to 5%. So to summarise that situation, I'm paid monthly interest. That amount of money is deposited into my current account. So I've got a constant income stream. Because it's up to £85,000, this is the important point, it is actually guaranteed as safe by the FSCS. That being so, if the banks went under, I'm protected up to the limit of £85,000. I get that money back from the FSCS. And it's critical, if you ever go to look at these banks, you've got to make absolutely sure that the product you're buying is a 12-month bond or savings account, and that it is FSCS approved up to £85,000. What I did with these banks, I emailed them and got it in writing. Can you confirm you're covered by the FSCS on this particular account up to £85,000? And I got confirmation that that was the situation. So I had it in writing. It was confirmed. You don't need to do it just for 1 year. You can actually, in fact, I made a mistake. I did all my accounts were just 12 months, 1 year. Looking at it back now, I wish I'd done it for 3 years, because what is going to happen towards the end of this year, 2023, we're going to have, I think, we're going to have the interest rates coming down. So if I could go back and do it again, in each instance, I would have locked my money away for 3 years in these accounts, giving me a monthly interest for 3 years, guaranteed of 4.5%, completely 100% safe. And by doing that, the significant point here is that I've had some of the big financial institutes, the salespeople contacting me, wanting me to invest with them. And I can save you right now with my story, that's all it is, up to £14,000. One investment house contacted me. The people were very nice. They weren't aggressive. They weren't trying the aggressive closed sales technique with me. They were very polite in giving the information. Very charming, actually. But the situation was this. With the amount of money that I've just invested with these different banks for no cost, no fees, I would have been paying £14,000 per year, and that, as it turns out, in this first year would have only given me a return of 3.5%, which compared to what I'm doing now represents a huge loss. So I'm not going, in my experience, I'm not going there. I've done it myself. I repeat, this is just a story of what I've done. I'm not advising you to do this. It's a story that you can follow and check out yourselves. So this is the point that I've covered today. We've just started to firm up on more details and touching upon investments, what can actually be done and how you can save yourselves a fortune. And again, repeating myself, I'm not charging anything for this. I'm not advising you to do it. Just check out the story yourselves. And I've told you the danger areas to be careful about. So on that one today, we conclude the third podcast, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Quick postscript to this podcast 3, and this is critical. What I should have mentioned is, whenever you're investing in, if you go the route of investing in the smaller banks, essential, you must check that each bank you invest in, they are not linked, they are not sister banks, because the £85,000 protection with the FSCS only applies to one bank. So let's say, for example, you invested in 4 banks, £85,000, and they all turn out to be owned by the same bank. You would only have one lot of protection of £85,000. Critical, I'm emphasising that point. You need to check that out, and you can do it on the FSCS website and the FCA website. They give a list of all the banks.